But one question for you, right? Uh, a lot of what you told me right now involves both private practice as well as going to a hospital. Some of the major surgeries obviously are done in a hospital. I'm assuming some of the minor surgeries are done in your practice. So, what is the foundational difference between a hospital practice versus a practice being done out of a clinic? Because you would probably stretch over both.
Yeah, see, the fundamental cost, a fundamental factor involved is basically the costs involved. See, in a private practice, if you're doing a procedure in your clinic, you just you're apart from all the planning and the informed consent and the patient counseling. Apart from that, the patient only pays you. You have very specific fee structure involved. The patient pays you by, you can swipe his card, or you can pay by cash or whatever. You basically, the money comes to you, and basically you share it with your assistants and the other people in the clinic. But in a hospital practice, there are a lot of other costs involved. You basically pay for the lab investigations. Sometimes, of course, the patient can get these lab investigations from outside. You pay for the hospital. There are hospital charges. You pay for the hospital room. You pay for the hospital post-operative charges, what's known as the ICU charges. Then a major chunk involves the OT charges. For the duration of the surgery that you're going to book a OT, in a hospital, that's say 2 or 3 hours. That has costs. That cost involves basically all the anesthetic and IV drugs that are consumed during those 2 or 3 hours, the consumables that are used, all kinds of, IV lines, syringes, disposable gloves that are used, the gowns. Then the anesthetist has got a charge, So basically there are a lot of the charges involved. Of course, the patient does get a very detailed bill, and of course the costing is much more. So you have to tell the patient all these things before that. You're going to pay everything overall. It's going to cost. You have to give a kind of a very ballpark figure. Generally it is always better to tell the patient that a range. Your procedure will probably cost between say 45,000 to 50,000. Give a range to the patient. Of course, finally, don't shock him with a bill for 1 lakh. You tell him 45,000 and then tell him, oh, finally it costs 1 lakh. You have to tell him a estimate of the total cost of the procedure. Give him a breakup that, this is the final cost. Many times the patients may have, your personal charges could be paid directly to you, and patient just has to reimburse the charges that go to the hospital. That is basically the room charges and the investigations, OT charges, the ICU charges, and the drugs that were used in the hospital, and he could pay separately to the anesthetist and to yourself, or he could. Some hospitals have a system where everything is clubbed and they pay everything to the hospital together. So anyway, you have to explain to the patient the rough, give them a range. Okay, it can be 5,000 less, more or less, but you have to give them a ballpark figure how the costing is going to be. So that is about the costing. And the other important thing is whenever you're in a hospital practice, you have to see it's not your private domain that you have to, of course, when you post a case for a particular time, make sure when you book an OT for, let's say, from 10 to 10 to 1 p.m. or 10 to 2 p.m., make sure you kind of finish the procedure in that time, because there's somebody else waiting after you. So you have to basically follow. You have to have a very good discipline. You have to be very punctual whenever you use a hospital, because you're using somebody else's time, somebody else's facility. It's not your own private backyard where you're doing you're operating. So when you book a theater for a particular procedure, try to finish off in that particular. Keep an hour extra for any eventualities or unforeseen circumstances, but try to stick to the time. And of course, patient the other thing when you're doing the other important thing is whenever you're doing a procedure in your private clinic, okay, remember you're the only one there, okay. Even a medical emergency or a medical complication can happen even with a simple extraction. Or a simple, even a minor procedure, minor surgical extraction, a simple extraction under local anesthesia can land you up in a major medical emergency. So in a private practice, you are all alone. Okay, you have to be extremely competent and confident to handle any medical emergency that happens. So always, my suggestion to you, to everybody who is going to do a surgical procedure under local anesthesia in their clinics, is be very well versed in your basic life support, what's known as BLS, have medical, what's known as a crash cart, medical emergency drugs and a medical emergency crash cart, have your oxygen cylinder, have an ambu bag, have a pulse oximeter, have all emergency drugs, be ready to at least till an ambulance arrives or till you can transport the patient to a hospital. Make sure you're able to keep him, prevent any deterioration or any threat to life by keeping him alive, keeping the patient maintaining his basics and vitals, if it's a serious medical complication, that is the least that is expected from all medical practitioners, whether you're a dental practitioner or a medical practitioner. You should know the basic life support, emergency drugs, handling all kinds of medical emergencies. If a patient completely recovers in your setup good enough, suppose he's slow to recover or not recovered and does require hospital supervision, make sure he's stable, his vitals are stable till the ambulance arrives and till he's transported, So you have to be very, very competent if you're doing a procedure in your private clinic. Be ready for any emergency, be very well trained in it, have all emergency drugs, protocols, have a plan B, plan C. You should have a pulse oximeter, stethoscope, you should have an ambu bag, you should be ready you should be trained in CPR. Okay, you never know when an emergency, till the ambulance arrives, till he can be transferred to
So, Zach, one question for you. I think that's a great insight. A lot of patients are now, a lot of doctors, especially oral surgeons, are now treating emergency cases, right? Even in COVID. That means there's always a risk that the patient might have COVID, or if he's a medically compromised patient, let's say he's got, hepatitis, or he's got some other condition by which he's already compromised. So what will be your advice to those dentists? What are the protocols that they need to follow for such as eventuality?
See, if I would suggest, giving emergency treatment to a patient. We don't even know whether patients nowadays are COVID positive. Okay, when you're attending to a patient, at least you should have your mask on. You instead of giving, if you have to give a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, at least use an ambu bag. At least use an ambu bag rather than giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Of course, as long as you're wearing a very good mask, there is no risk to contracting anything from the patient. You can easily give chest compressions. You can, but if you instead of giving a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, I would suggest at least give oxygen via an ambu bag. So that is my advice. If in these times, if you are going, if you want to minimize the risk to yourself, the other question, coming back to going to a previous question about how is private practice different from hospital practice. You see, in a hospital setup, if your medical emergency happens, you have the comfort that there are all kinds of specialists in the hospital. You know, there's an anesthetist available, there is emergency physicians available, there are nurses available, there are surgeons available. So you have a lot of help from different quarters if a emergency happens in a hospital. You know, whether it happens in the post-operative ward or if an emergency happens during the procedure. You know. And you have an anesthetist there. That is actually but in a private setup, you're all alone. Remember that. You should know what to do. You should be quick to think, and apart from that, you should be in a private setup. One very important thing especially when you're going to do a minor surgical procedure. Let's say you're going to place an implant, or you're going to do some, sinus lift procedure. You're going to do a bone grafting, or you're going to do an impact surgical, the procedure like you're going to remove an impacted tooth. It is very, very important to take a very good medical history. You should be very good in detecting. You should know when to do and when not to do. Okay, you should be very, very good in finding out a patient's medical history. A lot of patients are diabetic, hypertensive. They are on antiplatelet drugs like aspirin, clopidogrel. A lot of them have cardiac issues. So make sure that you evaluate a patient. I know that's a totally different, talk altogether, the evaluation and assessment of a medically compromised patient. But it's very, very important that you take a proper medical history. It comes with experience. You will know when to operate on the patient and when not to operate on the patient. If at all you're operating on the patient, I'm talking about when you're doing a procedure in your clinic, because you're the only one there. All the decision comes on you. You're the one who takes the call. Okay, so you have to basically balance the risks versus benefits ratio and take a call on whether you're going to do a procedure on this patient, considering all his medical history, and if at all you're going to do any modifications or any changes. And also, suppose you do end up with some sort of an emergency for this particular patient, you should always be ready with an emergency backup plan, emergency drugs for the particular patient. Suppose you feel the patient's condition is far too precarious, high risk case, high risk patient, take an opinion from a medical consultant, take an opinion from a cardiologist, diabetologist, rheumatologist, pulmonologist, whoever, a nephrologist, whomever you want. If the patient's medical condition is, you have the various classifications, your what's known as the American Society of Anesthesiologists classification, grade A, grade 2, class 1, class 2, class 3, so if you take a consent, if you're not confident, remember it is your call. Finally, it's going to be on your head. Okay, so I would always suggest people who are doing surgeries, minor oral surgeries in the private clinics, to be very, very well versed and I would say very well informed about medical conditions, medically compromised patients, medical conditions. Okay, you do require quite a bit of knowledge of general medicine and general surgery, okay, to handle such cases. You should know how to handle these cases. At the same time, you should not be anybody with a little, slightly increased, blood pressure, or who is, moderately hypertensive or slightly, diabetic. I would say you should avoid those cases also. You shouldn't be paranoid or you shouldn't be alarmist. That is one extreme. At the same time, you should not be too callous or too casual about such cases. Always take a middle ground. It is always a very well calibrated response. It's something like what the crisis we're facing now. Right now, if you look at the world, if you look at the COVID crisis, you either have, in India especially, you have one set of people who are absolutely not bothered. They're all into what's happening in Bollywood and what's in IPL. They just don't care. They're total apathy. And you have one set of totally paranoid people who are not stepped out of their houses, who are basically totally cut themselves out of the world. A middle ground is always better, very calibrated, and the more you are well informed, you can take better decisions, you know. So always I feel an informed decision is most prudent, especially dealing with a medically compromised patient. You know, it's something, the more information you have, the more you know, the better you can be your decision-making process, you know, and you can avoid any complications. You know, you can avoid, you're always ready to mitigate any risks or any you know, eventualities that could happen, unforeseen circumstances. So medical history is very, very important for all people, even general dentists who are going to do surgical procedures. You should know quite a bit about a patient's medical conditions. You can have all kinds of problems. The patient can have chest pain during a procedure. A patient can have an asthmatic attack, can have an epileptic attack during a procedure, can faint during a procedure. Yeah, and many times you don't even know the cause of the fainting, whether it's anxiety related, whether it's diabetic related, whether it's some sort of you know, endocrine problem. They can have bleeding post-operative. You know, in your dental chair, you could have uncontrolled bleeding. You know, so these are all things that you have to be extremely aware of and be prepared for such conditions. And remember, if you're doing a surgical procedure in your clinic, you're all alone. Okay, many times these procedures are done at night, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. You know, you don't know whom to run to. You know, ambulance will take a long time. You know, nobody will help you. So remember, you have to be very, very well informed, and the better you know, you can take better decisions. You know, so I can never, you know, overemphasize about medical history of patients when you're doing my surgical procedures in your private clinic. You know, and of course, if get whatever tests you need. If a patient is diabetic, get a recent blood sugar done. If he's hypertensive, check out his list of medications. Check his BP. If he's on any sort of medications, ask him to bring the list of medications. You know, remember, it's very important that many times the patients feel, why should a dentist know about my medical history? Okay, they feel, you know, why should I tell about my history of, you know, cardiac surgery, or my, you know, chest history of my, you know, chest diseases, or my you know, diabetic status, or what all medications I'm taking. Why should he know? Only you know that what is the relevance of such things. So you have to explain to the patient that that any surgical procedure done under local anesthesia has got ramifications, implications on because of his underlying medical condition, and it's very important for the sake of the patient's health that you know about his medical history, his list of medications, all kinds of things, so that there is no you know, disaster, or you know, at the end of the procedure, you know, so everybody can go home happy, you know, go home and there is no problem, you know. So it's very important to you know, emphasize and impress upon the patient the importance of medical history. The well-educated patients are very, you know, they're well-educated patients are very cooperative. They're very understanding about the medical history. It's the other kinds of patients, you know, who are not so well educated that you have to really impress them that medical history is very important. So, you know, don't scare them. That's one extreme. At the same time, don't be too casual. But take a very, very well calculated, well calibrated, informed decision about medical history to avoid any problems. Any problems in your clinic, of course, will affect your practice, will affect your reputation. You could invite litigation, medical legal problems. So, you know, the more you know, the more confident you are, better is your training. You can handle all kinds of medically challenging cases in your clinic.
Sure, Zach.
That's about.
Yeah, that was really helpful, Zach. I think some of the key points that I could make out is obviously be prepared. That seems to be your mantra throughout, right? That you know, better to do all the due diligence, the investigations, the reporting, the lab tests. Obviously, you know, very important. I think you brought up the legal aspect of it. I think not too much attention is paid on it. Informed consent, things like ensure that it is written, it's documented.
Yes.
patient has understood. Don't delegate this to anybody else. Do it yourself so that you are clear, patient is clear what he's getting into.
Yes.
Then all the preparation,
Yes,
like
yes.
getting an ambu bag, make sure the pulse oximeter is in place. Your I remember, I think was it you or somebody else who once told me that they even used to put a lead into the nerve to the vein, because in case they have to give drips during extraction, it was
Yes.
very difficult to
Yes.
find the right artery or vein that time, because it'll be very difficult. Uh, Also the
Many times, yeah, yeah.
and then other important thing I think
Times,
you brought up was the difference between the hospital setup. Because there are a lot of costs involved in the hospital.
correct.
You do have a lot of experts. You do have a lot of cover as well at a hospital, right? If something goes wrong, suddenly you have anesthetists, you have
Yes,
surgeons,
yes,
you have
yes.
a duty doctor at call, you have the nursing
Correct.
staff, you have an OT. But when you're on your own, you're on your own. So you better be fully prepared into what you're doing.
Yes.
Last but not the least, medically compromised patients focus a lot on being prepared for the eventuality. Obviously, wearing a mask and in COVID times, making sure the patient is aware of what he's getting into. Patient is aware what's happening. Patient is aware that he has disclosed his entire medical history. Right? He's not hiding anything back. He's not
Yes.
hiding something very
Yeah, yeah.
even insignificant as his diabetes levels, or maybe he has an epileptic attack in the past, because all of these could come into play during a surgery. So I think, Zach, overall this is a very very insightful
Correct.
session. I'm sure a lot of oral surgeons would take heed, at least the ones who are starting out or have just graduated from MDS. I think these are important principles that they should adapt as part of their practice, which will lead to a successful practice. Otherwise, you'll have a very troublesome practice littered with litigation and multiple visits to hospitals.